Someone once told me that if you want to make stupid sell, just put a ball cap on it and give it a political movement to latch on to. And I might have disbelieved him if I were not already the wiser.
It's January 9th, 2017.
Well, bravo then, Steve. That means you've been at this for a full 6 years and 30 days, and you're still as dumb as the day you started. That's quite an accomplishment. I do applaud you. Oh, I'm sorry, you were about to say something?
And it's time to review 5 of the most outrageous, infuriating, or just plain baffling things that have happened lately. It's your Facepalm 5. Let's count them down.
Indeed, Steve, let's count them down. However, I do have to warn you, if this list does not include that hat, that beard, and that wife of yours who seems to have a bigger set than you do, I might just have to disagree with you. But we shall see.
Number 1. Republicans move ahead with efforts to repeal Affordable Care Act.
Oh my, the Republicans are actually going to do something that they campaigned on. What is this world coming to?
After the election, pollsters discovered many voters who supported Donald Trump despite having received their health insurance thanks to the provisions of the Affordable Care Act. Why would anyone who relies on the ACA for their health coverage have voted for a candidate who repeatedly promised to get rid of it?
My, what a profound and so utterly well-executed rhetorical question, Steve. I am at a complete loss. Oh, no, actually, wait, I think I've got this figured out. The people that voted for Trump that have coverage under the Affordable Care Act did so because they actually had better and less expensive coverage before the ACA went into effect, lost that coverage, and were forced to either take the new coverage or pay a penalty. How do I know this, you might ask? That's exactly what happened to me.
Well, according to some, it's because they didn't take Trump seriously. He wouldn't really do that, would he?
Ah, yes. Some people. Some people tend to say a lot of things these days. Tell me something, Steve. Would you care to divulge a name or two, or at least a stat that shows who thought that Trump wasn't actually serious about this? Because I tell you, man, I had you all wrong. I thought that with that pasty, girly-looking physique and that extremely butch wife, that you were way too much of a girly man to be able to handle the manual labor that goes with being a farmer. But boy, can you build a straw man.
Guess what? Last week, Vice President-elect Mike Pence visited GOP lawmakers on Capitol Hill and told reporters they were planning to make good on their promise to repeal the ACA and replace it with something.
Ah, yes, something. The form following the function of they supposedly don't have a plan. Well, they did say something about allowing insurance to be purchased across state lines, which you currently can't do. And given that the company that was providing my insurance had to flee the state because of the ACA, that would help me quite a bit in getting my plan back. Oh, and they also mentioned something about health savings accounts so that I can actually have more control over how much money gets put in and how much value I get out of my health coverage. But nah, there weren't any specifics divulged as of yet, right? Ah, silly me.
You see, despite trying to repeal the ACA for the last 7 years, Congressional Republicans currently have no replacement plan.
Steve, if I were you, I'd get rid of that goofy-looking ball cap and get yourself a helmet or some other kind of protective headgear, because you just walked clear into retard territory on this one. There have been several specific alternatives to the ACA that have been laid out over the past several years. I mean, you'd think that you would even turn on the TV once in a while just to check out CNN or MSNBC to see one of these Republican congressmen explain all this, even though the host is obviously hostile and interrupting them every few minutes.
Which makes sense. You burn down the house you're living in first. Then you look for a new place. One thing at a time.
Dude, I'm loving the false wit and snark here. All you need to do is grow a little bit more hair and man up a bit more, and you could totally pass for Rachel Maddow.
Number 2, Republicans attempt to weaken ethics oversight. House Republicans held a late-night vote last Monday to strip the Office of Congressional Ethics of its independence and place it under the direct supervision of the Republican-controlled House Ethics Committee. This change was being pushed by members of Congress who have been investigated by the OCE. Probably just a coincidence. Anyway, by the next day, word had gotten out, and congressional offices were flooded with calls from angry constituents who demanded that they abandon this change to the OCE, and they did.
Yeah, Steve, I'm going to need you to crawl outside of Nancy Pelosi's vulva for just a minute here and open your ears up a bit. The particular ethics body in question has only been in existence for about 10 years. It was born basically out of an overreaction to the Abramoff scandal, and lo and behold, it didn't really seem to do much about the fact that Nancy Pelosi herself was buying stock in credit card companies while softening regulations on said companies. So, I mean, you can look at it any way you want. I have a link in the description about this. I wasn't particularly a fan of doing this soon, but Steve's blowing this way out of proportion. Particularly the whole thing about all the so-called activism that stopped this. This whole thing basically stopped because Donald Trump wasn't on board with it and he tweeted against it. But draw your own conclusions.
Number 3, Trump mocks intelligence agencies ahead of Russia hack briefing. Last week, President-elect Trump tweeted, "The intelligence briefing on so-called Russian hacking was delayed until Friday. Perhaps more time needed to build a case. Very strange." Well, at least he's keeping an open mind. Trump lied about there being a delay, by the way. Intelligence officials told CNN that there had never been any briefing scheduled for Tuesday that would have been delayed. They had no idea what Trump was talking about. But even if there had been a delayed briefing, I doubt very much it would have been because the officials needed to stall for time. Far more likely, the delay would have been because it takes time to rewrite intelligence briefings to the first grade reading level.
Dang, Steve, you're knocking them dead here. It's too bad that stand-up comedy is more about actually being funny rather than just being funny-looking, because if it was, you could take this act on the road. Oh, and just for everybody's general information, the current and soon-to-be former President Barack Hussein Obama, my homeboy, he's got an IQ of about 102, and that provides some insight as to why it is that his college transcripts are sealed. They probably suck, or they might be non-existent. Who knows? Donald Trump, on the other hand, has an IQ of 156. That's a little bit above a first-grade reading level, Steve Shives. Please try not to project your stupidity onto others. I know it's tempting, and it makes you feel better about yourself. And also on another note, leave us not forget that this is the same intelligence agency, in quotation marks, that has repeatedly lied to us about a bunch of things. In fact, NSA head Clapper actually lied to Congress about what the NSA is doing regarding domestic spying. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
4. Publisher denies condoning hate speech after signing professional bigot to book deal. Simon & Schuster have signed white supremacist rape apologist Milo Yiannopoulos to a $250,000 book deal. Yiannopoulos, you may remember, was permanently banned from Twitter last year after inciting a bigoted abuse campaign against Ghostbusters star Leslie Jones, and more recently, he took some time out of a talk he was giving at a college to sexually harass a trans woman who was in the audience. I bet that was it. That was what clinched the book deal, I guarantee.
Whoa, Steve, you mad, bro? Now, let's put this into perspective here. I mean, I'm not necessarily the biggest Milo fan, but you gotta admit, he's funny, he's playful, and he's not a vindictive twat. You could learn from him on these things, Steve. And for the record, regarding both the whole incident with Leslie Jones on Twitter, that was more a bunch of lone wolf people. I don't recall Milo actually inciting anything, and I was on Twitter and witnessed the full length of the exchange that occurred on her Twitter handle. And as far as the trans student over in Wisconsin, all I can say is that, as Milo said himself, if you can take a dick, you can take a joke. And Steve, You're probably taking one every night from what I can see, so you should be cool, man. Just be cool.
Anyway, Simon & Schuster released a statement defending the book deal and declaring that they do not condone hate speech in any form. Of course they don't. Just because they paid a professional hate monger in the six figures to publish his book, that doesn't mean that they condone what he says. Does it? What's condone? What does that mean?
You know, crazy as it may seem, I think I may actually agree with Steve on something. I am actually abhorred at the whole concept of being a rape apologist, and as such, I will not in any way attempt to apologize for or explain away the raping of the concept of humor that my ears just beheld.
Number 5, trolls blame Black Lives Matter for brutal kidnapping. Some of Milo Yiannopoulos' equally deplorable peers, who, for reasons which escape me, have not yet been banned from social media.
Whoa, you better go a little easy on the fascism there, Steve. That tent you're pitching is probably going to scare off all the feminists.
Have been blaming Black Lives Matter for the brutal abduction and beating of a disabled white man by 4 black 18-year-olds last week, a crime which was live-streamed by one of the perpetrators. None of the 4 suspects has any connection to Black Lives Matter, nor was their crime committed in the name of that movement. So, what possible connection could there be between these 4 black suspects and Black Lives Matter?
While the suspects have no official connection to Black Lives Matter, the actual movement, what they've done kind of smells like Black Lives Matter's handiwork. I mean, between the fuck white people and fuck Trump part, the act of domestic terrorism that took place, and the sheer stupidity of publishing it for all the world to see. Yeah, that reminds me a good bit of Black Lives Matter, actually.
Why are so many status quo warriors blaming this on Black Lives Matter?
Whoa, 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 status quo. Pardon my saying so, Steve, but who's been president for the past 8 years? I wouldn't describe the detractors of Black Lives Matter as being status quo, more the opposite of it, actually. Now, that may change after Donald Trump being president for a few years and a few things being done, although I don't think the alt-right is going to get everything they want out of him. But as of right now, not really an applicable term, if it even is a real term.
I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm gonna say racism?
Ouch! Man, that's a lot of brain damage for a person who wears a sports cap but doesn't actually play a sport.
The people who are seeking to use this terrible crime to discredit Black Lives Matter are a bunch of fucking piece of shit racists? Just a guess.
Well, Steve Shives, I'm sorry to inform you that even though you are our final contestant, you guessed wrong! You do not get the prize. And just for the record, Black Lives Matter doesn't need to be connected to this particular event in order to be discredited. They do that pretty well on their own.
That's 5. Catch you later.
All right, Steve, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Oh, and on behalf of my IQ points and that of everyone else's, thank you for not making it 6. For anyone who wants to watch the whole video, I have no idea why you'd want to do this, but I do have the link in the description, and I would advise against commenting because then he'll just block you and think he's more of a man for doing it. So until next time, with prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.